So continuing this series of tips and what works best for me, I wanted to go ahead and throw up a bench tip video. Now I will say my bench is nothing impressive. However, that being said, over the course of the past year, I've made tremendous progress where I spent years really just spinning my wheels. So these are the things that have really helped me over the course of the last year improve my bench. Now the first thing I want to talk about is the bench itself, and this is something I didn't really notice was a problem until I started competing in powerlifting and actually benched on a competition style bench, which is very sticky, which means it allows you to dig your traps and shoulders into the bench. Many commercial gyms have these very smooth or slippery benches where trying to set up, I'm unable to do this. And this is a big problem for me, especially considering the fact I don't really have that much of an arch and generally bench flat backed. So what I do is I put out some of these mobility or resistance bands down on the bench, and what this does is it makes the bench a lot more sticky, like a competition bench would, and allows me to get into prime position despite not being able to arch tremendously. The next thing I like to do is use my Olympic shoes for the bench, and this is for a couple of reasons. Number one, I feel a lot more stable and grounded in these. I feel they have better grip on them than, let's just say, a pair of running shoes. And it also allows me to put my feet fairly further back and still allow me to have my foot flat on the floor. Now this is because of the raised heel, so it really makes up for any ankle mobility problems you might have. Now the problem with putting your feet too far in front of you is this allows you to be pretty loose, and that's not what you want. You want to be as tight as possible, so I try to get my feet as far back as I can while still keeping my feet on the floor, and again, the shoes help. Now, as far as grip width goes, you'll see a lot of different things from a lot of different people. What I like to do is take a grip width that allows me to have my forearms perpendicular to the floor when the bar is at my chest. So this is really going to play into account your own degree of elbow tuck. But for me, this is going to give me the most power pressing up. So 90 degrees from the floor, strong press up. Now to take a look at an example of why I try to do this, let's say I were to go with a wider grip. The problem with that is when I bring the bar to my chest, you'll see that there's a degree of flare involved now, and I lose some of that pressing power on the horizontal plane. So this is not as strong of a position for me. On the flip side of that, taking a narrow grip and some elbow flare here, you're still not really getting all that pressing power that you could if you were to go straight up and down. And yes, I am aware, Illuminati confirmed. I also always try to make sure that I use a bench that has an adjustable rack position. Now being a little bit taller with longer arms, I prefer a higher rack. And what I'm really looking for is a position that allows me to just pull the bar out with as little as effort as possible, lifting that bar up. So some problems you might run into if you have too high of a rack position, you're gonna end up untucking your shoulders and getting loose in your upper body. So all that work we just did setting up is going to go out the door. But on the flip side, what I see the most problem is at commercial gyms is having too low of a rack height. So that unracking is almost a rep in itself, not to mention it's a really awkward position to get into and have any kind of power. Perhaps the biggest help to me has been utilizing paused reps in my training, and the reason I like these so much is it forces you to find the most powerful position. When you just do touch and go, you can really get away with flaring your elbows only because you can use the momentum off your chest, but using these pause reps forces you to find wherever position's most powerful and really get that pressing power out. Now, even if you don't compete in powerlifting, these have a very good translation to your touch and go reps as it teaches you better motor patterns. Speaking of better motor patterns, I've found having a consistent setup helps as well. Before, I just kind of go in, lay down and bench. I wouldn't think too much about my setup, but I always try to get in the best position possible, and you'll see from all these angles that my setup is fairly similar. I set my grip, I set my feet, dig in my traps and shoulders, wiggle in to make sure I'm set and have a strong lift off. Now again, these are just things that have worked for me over the course of my own lifting career. Your best bet is to go into the gym and find out what works best for you, but like I said, these things have really helped me, and hopefully they help you too if bench has been a sticking point. Regardless if you decide to try some of these or not, again, the key thing here is consistency, so always try to get better, always give it time before changing things up, and try to develop a pattern of success. As always, thanks for watching, and stay big.